All right, everyone. Hello out there, whatever out there is, for this most recent edition of Excited Utterance. This is a reading series that's in the round, based in the greater Chicagoland area, but over our 10 plus years, not consecutive years for the pandemic, for example. And we've had writers from all over the world who have participated, but we happen to have a Chicago-centric show tonight. I'm Larry Odine, the host of this thing, and I'm really pleased to have, in the order on the screen at the moment, joining me tonight, Dan Raeburn and Lina Ferreira, two writers whose work I had enjoyed for quite a while, and who recently, I met them both recently for the first time. I won't bore the audience with all the details, and got to hear them read, and I was just thrilled that they both could be here for this September edition as the season becomes much more fall-y. So I'm just going to give a quick spiel for how this is set up. So a round robin is traditionally something I think people associate with music, and I'm a musician as well, where I got the inspiration for this. It's an opportunity for, in this case, writers to get together from, can be various disciplines. It's really not so important what they're writing as much as that they are writing, to get together, and each writer will give like a mini set, and this happens 3 times. Again, we don't have to tell the audience what the length of those sets are because they tend to vary a little bit, but they tend to be compressed. And sometimes some interesting stuff can happen when you're given the opportunity to kind of break things up into different bites like that, rather than the traditional, if I give a reading, I'll go and, hey, you have 10 minutes or 15 minutes or something. Did either of you have any like introductory notes or incantations or anything that that you wanted to give?
I'll just say I'm going to be reading from Work in Progress, which
Cool.
something
Yes.
I've never done before.
Yeah.
Might be a big mistake. Let's hope so. It'll be more interesting that way.
This is the place to have mistakes, let me tell you.
Is it like a permanent place on the internet that can be viewed forever?
Oh, well, good point. I was just thinking of this particular venue. Here we don't, there's no problem with it. The mistakes are often the most fascinating part of anything, as far as I'm concerned anyway. So
I'm actually going to read a first draft because I came to your class and I read something that I'd like written a week before, and realistically, like no offense to anybody, but we're not going to go viral. The only people who are like really going to be looking at this are like writers and probably a lot of students, and I'm a big believer in the transaction of vulnerability. Like I never ask somebody to do something that I'm not willing to do. So I have a first draft, and then I have something really, really polished enough that it was already published by Orion Magazine.
Great. I think I remember the piece you're talking about. So I think I do. Yes.
Oh, that's another one. I have another piece coming out with Orion.
Even better.
This one's also violent. Don't worry.
Oh yeah, I'm ready. Yeah.
Equally violent.
Okay, if you're both good, I'm gonna read, then Lina will follow and Dan will follow. We had an elaborate ceremony to establish this before. It goes back to the Knights Templar, and you guys don't know. So I guess since Dan, you'll be following up the rear, as we say, I'm gonna let you go right now so you can have your steak and get yourself mentally ready, and we'll see you shortly.
Okay.
All right. And then Lina, ditto, a little less shortly. I'm glad you're here tonight. Yeah. All right. The introduction to this is always the kind of the semi-painful thing, just only painful in terms of, I got to introduce everything, get it going. And I myself am always a little bit nervous before these events. So the first set is always kind of trial by fire for me, trial by liquid in this case. So I've had like just a suddenly really busy last couple of days. And yesterday, I always look back at what I did for the previous edition of this, which actually was back in March. Normally we would have had a show in June, and we didn't have one for various reasons. Nothing too troubling, just didn't have one. And nothing too fun either. Unfortunately, I wasn't in Iceland or whatever. But and so I am going to devote what I'm reading from tonight. It's all poetry. I'm a poet. To a book that I have coming out from Salmon Poetry, which they publish my full-length works. And this book was actually supposed to come out in 2020. Why? Geez, what happened then? And it's been delayed. I believe it's going to come out next year now. Salmon is a small, but very lovely in terms of the aesthetics of the press and the people involved. Very lovely small press. And it actually gave me the opportunity to revisit this manuscript, which is called Frequently Asked Questions. And to go back and prune what was there. I pulled some stuff out of the original version of it and I added some stuff, and then I did some editing. I think it's much better for it. So I guess thank you, COVID, in that one instance only. Kind of no rhyme or reason to the sets here by organization, except that they're all from this book that should be out next year. So I'm gonna shut up with the introductory stuff, and I'm gonna get to the first poem. I also structured, see, now I'm doing it again. I also structured these sets tonight. I tend to pack them tight, and I'm a reader who, I like kind of the manic fast reading style, and I'm trying to like move away from that a little bit tonight. So will I succeed? I don't know. So the first poem is here is called The Hand Won't Clap Itself. The hand won't clap itself. It sits at the end of the wrist like a piece of ripe fruit to pick or to be picked. The hand can't clap itself. Even if the clapper jiggles their arm so vigorously it slaps the skin ad nauseum, it's not the sound of two hands clapping, not applause or seducing dogs or babies to turn at the noise and advance toward the source. The hand won't clap itself. It has so much more to do. The hand is in demand every minute of every day to be at hand or handy for whatever come what may, on its own or in cahoots with its partner across the way. The hand won't clap itself, even if it could. The hand understands this won't do any good. Right. So one way that this manuscript changed, leaning down to get my possibly alcoholic, I don't know, beverage here, is it got more political. I mean, I have no qualm with political, but it did. And so this is one of the poems that could be considered that. I tried to remember the inspiration for this. I mean, I know who the person is. I think it was post Katrina. No, actually, I'm not sure. It's called What to Wear to a Flood. Spiky stiletto, hypodermic heels, inoculating deluged and drenched streets, vanished vehicles peeking out from underwater like dazed hippos. Slim black pants, the latest, flown in from Paris, Texas overnight, aboard Air Force One, obtained by Secret Service personnel on quadruple overtime. Form-fitted green silk bomber jacket tailored to specifications as determined by re-employed NASA engineers. Mirrored aviators reflecting nothing, no sunshine, clouds only. Unabating rain beads off lenses, slinking down like tears, evacuating eyes, reflecting nothing. All right. This is one sentence stories. Discovering the secret of what lies beyond death, Dr. Bob was unimpressed. There's no place like home, sighed the spider in its web. Myrtle fed the pigeons that reminded her of her dad. At the edge of the world's tallest cliff, Marcello spat. Harry's cat Persimmon watches TV when he sleeps. It was hard to tell everyone apart at the sperm donors convention. Susie disappeared using the self-checkout. The latest poll confirms there's life on Mars on the coasts. An apple a day is good agribusiness. All right. Shockingly, even as I kind of trying to rein myself in, I've come to the last poem here. You know, and I realized looking at this poem again, I have a lot of poems that are set in grocery stores. I mean, it's no mystery to me. I love grocery stores, especially Jewel, where this one is set as far as that goes. And again, that's I could go off on a tangent about the beauty of Jewel, but I won't. And there's more I could say about this again, but I won't. So I'll just go into it. It's called Mr. Jones by Counting Crows. And after this, we'll bring Lina in here to class up the joint. I heard it in the grocery store, piped in so clear, there in the canned food aisle. My hand hovered in mid-reach for 8 ounces of tinned peaches I planned to bake into a pie. So taken was I, my peach search was abandoned, and I ran, frantic and alive, to find an employee crouched, shelving toilet paper 2 rows away. No problem, he said, even if I had disrupted his task. In truth, probably happy to take an unplanned break. And because he could not hear so clearly with a mother and bawling newborn nearby, we went back to the stacked cans and stood close to the source, tilting ears toward the tinny sound piping in through industrial speakers. That's Mr. Jones by Counting Crows, he said, and my first thought was, who is this Mr. Jones? But I did not betray the depth of my curiosity, and instead thanked him for his help, relieving him from his questioning to return freely and forthwith to the squeezably soft Charmin previously assigned. Mr. Jones lying in the air above every aisle now. As I jogged briskly to the customer service desk at the other end of the store, where there was no wait, and a manager labeled Jeff on a tilted white name tag asked with a smile just beneath his neat mustache, "How can I help you?" As I practically begged, "Can you shut that horse shit off?" All right. Lina.
That's hard to follow. Uh, I'm glad that I'm sandwiched between both of you. I have an idea of, I mean, I'm familiar with dance work and I'm a big fan. I am going to bring things down, and I trust that Dan will bring up the tempo again, because as the Imperial forces are about to descend upon Chicago, it weighs heavy on me, and I know that one wants to turn it off, but too many don't have the choice to turn it off.
Dan
And
and
I say this,
about this before
yeah.
you arrived. Yeah, I don't mean to cut.
Oh,
Because I'm
no, no,
gonna
no, no.
it over to you. But we were talking about this very thing, and I was like, it's very hard for me to turn my head away from this. In
Mm.
part, that could be why I chose the material I did. But anyway, yeah, I'm
No, no, I understand it completely. And I say this as somebody who just became a citizen. Like, I can count the days, and I did it in no small part because I am frightened by the events and the sort of Damocles, how low it can hang and swing and how hard it can swing. Um, but I pass in ways that, for a complexion that I never wanted as a child. I always envied my like younger sister who got all the melanin, because this is what happens when you mix a bunch of races over hundreds of years. But anyway, so this is our first draft from, I think it happened and I wrote it right away and then I put it away, and now I can't, like, this is the first time that I've dug it up because we have to look, when we can be looked over, then it's our duty to not look away. So this is me trying to stare directly into it.
absolutely. Let me go and give you the stage. Sound good?
Yeah.
All right.
This is called Excuse Me, and I hope it reads like an essay for it's meant to be one. It's really called Excuse Me. Excuse me? A thin, brown-skinned man calls out to me. Excuse me, jogging across a grocery store parking lot in Southside Chicago. I can take it back for you, pointing at my cart still loaded with groceries. dark skinned and underdressed, with an accent I recognized immediately. I can take, Jess? He repeated, and I nod. He repeats, and I nod. Un minuto, parce, I say, as I load a bag onto the back of my girlfriend's car and feel him suddenly pull back. Habla español? The white bite of a Chicago winter and a mixed-race man shivering in his shirt sleeves. I nod and point to myself. Colombiana. Ah, his eyes seem to spark to life. ¿En serio? Really? Yo soy de Venezuela. I can't do the Venezuelan accent, so my apologies to whoever is Venezuelan and never hears this. I nod again, as in, I know, as in, I recognize your accent, as in, even if I didn't, chances were you were Venezuelan because they've been sending busfuls of people just like you to teach Chicago a lesson. Yo soy Lina. I stretch out my hand to him, and he hesitates for a moment before pressing his own hand into mine and shaking it vigorously. Josué, he says, while looking over my shoulder at my partner's 2019 Subaru Crosstrek. Mi niña es así como tú, he says, as he wipes his nose with the back of his hand, leaving a thin streak of black car grease in his on his face. My little girl, he tells me, while pointing with his index finger at my face. She has pretty light eyes like yours. Then, down at my bare forearm, también es mona, pale too, like you. I purse my lips and feel the weight of my pale privilege. Ah, see? You wouldn't have known if I hadn't revealed myself with the flatness of my Andean accent. I could have left my card for him to collect or shaken my head and lied like I sometimes do. Sorry, I don't carry cash. Sorry, not today. Sorry, sorry, sorry. I grit my teeth and I stare at his mixed features, at his short stature, at his skin, cinnamon wood bark and rain-soaked soil. A thin leather canvas pulled tight around starved muscles and a thick Venezuelan accent. Nowhere to hide. He can't pass. Necesito una chaqueta, I tell him, pointing at his short sleeves and the terracotta goosebumps on his skin. A jacket. You'll need one to make it through the winters. Ah, sí. He looks down at his own bare arms, a prickles of skin, the bumpy path of vestigial Caribbean tans. Pues, creo que sí. He nods along at my obvious observation and rubs his arm like a scratch-off ticket. ¿Y ya cuánto llevas acá en Chicago? I should have hesitated when he asked me how long I'd been here. I should have considered what he was really asking. I should have thought beyond the vibrations of words in an Aldi parking lot. But instead, I let the words be words, a mechanical accumulation of transactional sounds. 4 años. 4 years, I say, mechanically. Just 4. And then, late, already so late, I see the sparks in his eyes again, a hot wire flicker, an electric flash. 4 años, he gasps. 4. Looks around in disbelief, first at me, then at the car behind me, and finally around at this holy place of concrete and frostbite. 4 years, he whispers to himself. 4. Yes, but I say, and want to follow up with something about learning Spanish early in childhood, about attending college in Utah, about sleepless nights spent practicing my accent away. Y ya tienes carro. He motions with his chin at the white Subaru behind me. Oh, well, right, but increíble, he says. And I think about correcting him, about telling him this isn't my car, that mine got stolen by a kid from the south side with a screwdriver I later found digging through glass to find my grandmother's rosary beads. That I know it was a black kid because of an officer told me, just a kid, while shaking her head, black south side boy. I swore, and I swear I could hear something in her voice, like the tightening of a screw. I think often of that boy who left his blood all over that airbag, and I think about telling this man about him, but I don't know why. Telling him that I know he was a kid because a black officer at the precinct told me, just some kid, a teen, he fled on foot. Pues, well, el carro no es mío, I tell him. It's not even my car. Mine got stolen by a teen who crashed it against another joyrider. I tried to explain to him, but he isn't listening. But still, he says, aún así, this is a place where you can borrow someone's car to go get groceries, where you can get your car stolen and make a joke of it, where you can bleed all over rosary beads and beads and flee on foot and still manage to muster pity from an officer in a tucked away precinct in the South Side. And I forget to tell him I've only been in Chicago for 4 years. So maybe I didn't quite forget. Solo en Chicago solo esta vez. I don't find the words to tell him, but it took me 17 years to get a green card, a dozen visas, 3 dozen flights, and more than 100 hours filling out paperwork, waiting in line and sitting in small holding rooms in the Miami airport, 17 years to watch my sister do the same, and a blonde woman respond to my post online about finally having a green card by stating, "Thank you for waiting your turn," unlike so many other people. 17 years nodding at women like her who say that they can call them towel heads because they live there, that they can call us wetbacks because they've been married to some of us. Dígame qué necesita, I tell the man in parking lot, conscious of the distance of his body from mine, of the distance of my formal conjugation and the closeness of his, of the likely proximity of our ages and bloodlines. My great-grandmother was from Maracaibo, I'll sometimes tell my gringo friends, and quickly follow it with, "It's in Venezuela," because it's unfair to expect them to know that, to know us from our accents, to recognize one of 3 yellow, blue, and red flags. For the gold in our land is the yellow I used to recite in school presentations. For the blue of our skies and our seas, I used to hold my hand over my heart, holding up a flag or a map, pointing at a picture of Policarpa Salavarrieta, Francisco de Paula, Santander, Simon Bolivar, at the picture of a man who broke Spain's grip from the South American cone. So tell me, I say instead, thinking, red for the blood of our patriots and all who have died so that we can stand here. Tell me, I tell the man in the parking lot, at this man, pointing to the groceries in the back of my borrowed car. Tell me what you need. Take whatever you want. I don't know. I understand what the instructions that Larry gave before we started, but I also don't have the power to bring Larry back. So I'm not
I'm
100%
here.
sure. Okay, great.
I haven't gone into my coma yet. Yeah, so you had a question.
No, no questions whatsoever. It is I'm a big believer in like sharing new work, but I actually don't endorse reading first drafts because the amount of like filling in the gaps that I had to do, going like, oh, that's not a word, and I have to like
Oh,
jump across it, is exhausting. So I'm very excited to read work that is actually polished here on out. Um, but yeah, I grocery stores. That's the
oh,
theme.
yeah, I noticed. Are you, that's your piece for the moment? Yes. Are
That's
you
my piece
ready?
for the moment.
Are,
I
are
think
you?
it's 7 minutes and 23 seconds as per your instructions.
You are a pro. I'm the one who's coming in under on everything here. Well, let's bring Dan back in, and well, this is for because Dan's going to follow up here since we're all friends. All right. So Dan, are you feeling ready? You had your shot of cappuccino
Bourbon.
with
Urban.
yeah
Yes,
yeah.
I am ready. Lina, I just want to say, like,
I'm
that
bringing myself out here. I'll let you two talk for a second. How's that sound?
good. That first draft you read, that's why I helped recruit you to come to Chicago. That's some good shit.
Big man on campus, Dan. You don't know how much you are missed.
Yeah. That was amazing. And I thought it was really interesting that, you're in the parking lot of a grocery store. Larry's in the grocery store. I do have a Jewel Osco scene in the book that I'm going to read from, but
Brilliant.
it's not from tonight's selection. It's on page 289. So we won't get there.
Shame. Missed opportunity. If we'd only communicated our love for grocery stores a little bit earlier. I'm very excited. I think Larry can take me out. I don't have any power.
Okay. All right. So this is the prologue. This is what I call chapter 0 from a memoir I'm writing about owning an apartment in a condominium association in Chicago. So, with no further ado, my first draft. I've got the raw material of this story stuck all over every wall of this room, like the clues on the evidence board in a detective show. Minutes of meetings and announcements, bulletins, budgets, bylaws, emails, entreaties, accusations, recriminations, and threats. It's got me surrounded, this thing. It feels like it's telling me to surrender, to come out with my hands up and admit I've got no fucking idea where to start telling this thing. Definitely not on April 4th, 1993. That's the day my dad dropped me off here in Chicago. Me, my mountain bike, and my mullet, in a wind so cold it made my eardrums ache. I remember a pigeon hopping from the gutter to the curb and back, bobbing its head idiotically. I was 24 years old, and I had moved 19 times in my life. 20 times now, if you count the ex-girlfriend's couch I was fixing to crash on. But the story doesn't really start until 7.5 years after that, right before I moved to California, at my going away party, where my friend told me about this amazing apartment he and his wife had just bought in Hyde Park on the South Side. A unit in a condominium, the same condo that will bring me back here. The condo I will also buy into, which is what this book is about. Buying into things. In my case, into the belief that we will run this condo, not necessarily harmoniously, but fairly, democratically, or at least legally. But the only honest place to start telling this story is at the end, which is that after 15 years of living in this condo, I sold my unit at a profit, because this is a story about gentrification, and I'm the gentrifier. Not that I want to be. Nobody wants to be the reason people lost their home, but it's hard to argue otherwise when a condo full of Black, white, Asian, and Latin families winds up being run by 3 white guys. One of them was me. I can't get into all that yet. Not right off the bat. It's too complicated. It's too ugly. Let's do it later when I'm good and ready. Let's start in the middle of the story instead, with the most dramatic moment in the whole story, the fire. The one that could have killed us all, which was definitely arson. The detectives said so, but they couldn't say who started the fire. Not officially, not with certainty. Our building insurance company was not satisfied with this, so they hired a private detective who conducted his own investigation. Long story short, in the end, the 2 investigators agreed on one thing. Someone tried to burn our building down. Someone who had a key to it. I'd say that no one knows who, but everyone knew. Not that anyone was arrested. And now that it's been more than 7 years, no one will. So maybe I don't start with the fire. Maybe start with the time I, as the duly elected secretary of the board of directors of our condominium, had to sick the sheriff's office on our president. If I hadn't, my neighbors could have sued me for dereliction of duty. Speaking of duty, maybe I should start by admitting that I didn't come by my unit in this condo honestly. I got it by lying to the bank. And in that sense, I stole it. Maybe that's it. Stealing. I start with the fact that this book has been stolen. Twice. The first time I wrote this book, someone broke into my office on campus and took it. 2 years later, after I'd rewritten the book from scratch, someone broke in here and stole it again. I've written this thing twice now. Maybe the third time is the charm. I'm out.
If you had a mic, you would do the mic drop there. Am I right? Yeah.
Ding.
Yeah. Oh, that sounded great. What I don't really have a qualm with reading stuff that is work in progress, but at the same time, usually when I present stuff, it's done enough to me, you know. I mean, I'm thinking I'm ready to give this a try and see how it comes across. I really do think it's hard to know how done something is until you read it. Like, how did that feel to you?
Uh, it's funny. Like as I'm reading it, I'm editing it,
Yeah,
and I read this probably 3 times today. But when I read it aloud, all of a sudden I'm a much better editor. I'm like, oh, that can go, that can go, that can go. I don't need to say this, and I need a little more a little more like syntactical padding here for the sake of rhythm.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I
Yeah,
think.
I think this applies whether it's poetry, whatever it is. You just hear stuff that you just don't know. You just don't even when you read it aloud to yourself, as you were saying.
Yeah,
It's so strange. I mean, I've read for huge crowds and small crowds, and that experience is the same regardless. The window dressing that makes it different might be if it's like a big crowd that's really into you, that really listening to you, and you get that energy from it. But the experience with a very different kind of crowd can still be the one thing that tells me if something's working or not. Do you know what I mean?
yes,
It's not a question of disconnect where I'm like, oh, they're just not paying attention. I mean, as a musician, I know what that's like. I played
mm,
gigs where it's like people are just not paying attention. I don't hold it against them. It's not. I've done this for too long, but it's more for me. So it's
yeah.
kind of. I mean, I didn't mean to put you on the spot there, but I think that the reading aloud is such a fundamental thing. It just really needs to be. In my writing classes, I try to talk about it. It's like read it aloud. Read it in front of a crowd if you can, but definitely read it aloud.
Yeah.
That's when you hear the stuff.
Well, and the thing about like a literary reading is that we go to events like this to listen, and we go to see music to drink beer and meet all of our friends. It's a tougher crowd when you're up there with a guitar on stage. It's often a tougher crowd.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Um, there's definitely different dynamics, but then there's a lot of different dynamics between reading series too.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, I won't keep you. I really enjoyed that. I'm looking forward to the next snippet.
Yes, it's part 2 coming up.
All right. All right. We'll see you in just a little bit.
Okay.
As you can see, I never quite know with the segues what to do here. And once again, you can also see I'm adjusting myself here. Wow, really fantastic stuff from both Lina and Dan. I'm totally enjoying this. So I'm gonna bring it down. Lina was talking about bringing it down, but instead I'm bringing it down on a class level now. We're getting back down to the basement, and then Lina and Dan can like move to the upper levels of this beautiful structure that is the reading here tonight. I'm gonna read I think another 4 poems. It's worked out kind of like 4, 4, and 2 for these sets. Again, all from this forthcoming book from Salmon Poetry, and the book itself is called Frequently Asked Questions. I think titles of books are really important. I mean, this one is like came to me fairly quickly, and it has like a question motif that I realized worked well within the poems that weren't written to any particular specific, and then you lay them all out after however many years you've been working on them. If it's been years, it was years here, and then you kind of like look for ways that they're interacting with each other, and so that question motif seemed to work well. But I always have just liked that FAQ, that's something about it, even though it's like a more generic title that I might normally go for, seemed to really work. So this is called America is Running Out of Bomb Sniffing Dogs. And it had an epigraph that I changed that more or less says the same thing. So I'll go ahead and read it. I updated it. I looked at the older one, and so this being able to come back and fabricate the book for this later publication. The quotes from Wired. Problems with procurement and breeding during the pandemic mean that the population of bomb dogs working in the U.S. right now may be aging and stretched even more than usual. America is running out of bomb sniffing dogs. We've never figured out how to plan ahead. We expect something to always stay, then one day it doesn't. So we put out bowls of Bully Max, Pedigree, American Journey chicken and sweet potato recipe grain-free dry nuggets along highways and curbsides, waiting for packs of famished pooches to come running. Even then, there would still be semesters of schooling, training to detect finicky fragrances of explosives and detonation devices, the kinds of everyday materials common canine noses would miss or dismiss when eclipsed by the sudden introduction of newfangled, submissive, upturned butts. This is called Crazy Sex Pills. A couple of years ago, more than a couple of years ago, I did a book that was a thematic book based on spam email, and this was one of the spam email subject lines that I wrote down, and I never did it for the spam book, and then I came back to it later, and this has some of the trappings of a guzzle. Anyone's familiar with that form? A GHAZAL, but if it is a guzzle, it's a very loose guzzle because it's called Crazy Sex Pills. You will have an excellent erection, excellenter than all other erections, the most superlativist of erections, ever in the recorded history of erections. Even though this is not a contest between erections, all of us can rest assured and sleep safe with our erections. Everyone can have and hold on to erections. We can unilaterally be proud to call erections veritable textbook definitions of erections, and at the same time, new frontiers in erections. The Vasco Nunez de Balboa of erections, Lewis and Clark or Amerigo Vespucci of erections, erections in search of other erections. For the sake of comprehending and conquering erections, semantic satiation may make all erections essentially meaningless. But if I say erection, 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 it does not diminish the inherent being of my erection, even if verbal repetition repeatedly arouses in erections a specific neural pattern that corresponds with erection, or more specifically, the meaning of the word erection, rendering it nonsensical, void, avoid erection as a psychological phenomenon. Let the corporeal erection be the real erection in a world overrun with fake erections. The correction of erection should mitigate against erection, insurrection, deflection, or inspection for legit erections. It is well settled that the definition of an erection is, I know one when I see one. And two more in this set. So this is, I think, pretty self-explanatory title-wise. And of the current crop of creeps, which is an understatement, in some ways this person doesn't rise or sink to other levels, but at the same time, the culpability and the you should know betterness makes him particularly galling. And this is a poem that, yes, when I revisited this in collection, I thought maybe I would take this out, and then I added to it. Still Life with Marco Rubio. White shark fin teeth sunshine stater, dry-mouthed water grabber, tweeter of proverbs and dream reactor, heckled and screamed at constituent avoider, Bombay canary in a coal mine, awkward Ivanka hugger and Syrian striker, Pensacola Beach privatizer, Jacksonville and Tampa Bay office vacator, Orlando Dian ignorer, Miami Dolphin cheerleader, sit and slumper, Secretariat of Surreal E-Stater, National Security Ill-Advisor, Acting National Archiver and Records Administrator, Visa Revoker, Dissent Crusher, Student Deporter, Ideological Hegemonizer, Foreign Policy Weaponizer, Officialis of Remigrationer, ghost administrator of the dismantled U.S. aid. So, child starver? People killer? And quick quaff, one more poem here. This is called Laundromat Villanelle. It's a villanelle. I don't regularly, I mean, more so now, write in forms, but it's not my thing to like, there's a poet named A.E. Stallings, and she just completely writes in form, and she's really awesome at it. But I've always liked the villanelle form. I like to read villanelles, and when I put it upon myself to write in forms, and I try to stick to it, which I don't think is necessarily the point, you know, that you write a perfect version of the form. I tend to like the results as much as I can like my work, which is maybe something others can relate to. So Laundromat Villanelle, and then we'll bring Lina in again, which kind of ties in with the first line. Again, I bring the basket in, full to the brim with dirty clothes. The whites tumble, the colors spin. I siphon soap into its bin, but forgot your socks with toes. Again, I bring the basket in. Steam on the glass veils my vision. Is drying done, or does it still go? The whites tumble, the colors spin. Like a fish that shed its fins, I sit and stew as time slows. Again, I bring the basket in, as I have done many millions of cycles like these, I suppose. The whites tumble, the colors spin. I'm all alone as daylight dims. With neatness being predisposed, again I bring the basket in. The whites tumble, the colors spin. Right. Lina.
I keep finding myself kind of like clapping along, so I have to mute myself and then remember to like unmute myself again.
Clap away.
I think excellent erection is gonna stay with me for a while.
Well, you know, the funny thing about that is that's you know, I did the spam poem book years ago, and then that was like I said, that was like an idea, and it never came to fruition. And then I was going through my notebook, and I came across that, and it just seems almost too. I mean, it's not that I'm beyond crass by any means, but it just kind of like didn't do anything for me. And then suddenly I looked at it, and that sort of repetition, you know, the semantic satiation or whatever, you just keep repeating it, it starts
Yeah.
nothing. And there's something about that word, and then it just seems so loaded in so many ways that's what the poem turned into. And I'm not sure it's fair to call it a guzzle, but that repetition of the one rhyme throughout, you know, if I can get mileage for calling it a guzzle, then I'll definitely take it.
I was listening to you read, and I want to pay you a compliment, and I don't know if it'll sound like a compliment when I say it, but it is meant as one, which is to say that I think Gertrude Stein would have hated that.
Oh, okay. Well, this should be discussed at length later. I'm going to take it as a compliment. Let's put it.
It's a compliment. It's definitely a compliment. I think you know, a rose is a rose is a rose is a rose, or like tender buttons, and like the repetition. And I think so much is about semantic satiation of things that we find meaningful, and then the semantic satiation of things that we try to ignore their meaning. I think is a reversal that is desperately needed. I also quote the autobiography of Alice B. Toklas is phenomenal satire of what nonfiction aims to be, and I think I quote it like once a week. I've only known two geniuses, and it's so easy to like just insert anyone's name into that. But yeah, it'll stick with me. I'm really excited for your book. When does it come out? I know we're not plugging yet, but I'm excited to read it.
Oh, you can plug throughout the show here. You could make the whole next set of yours just one big plug, but hopefully next year. You know, I thought maybe this year, and then are you familiar with Salmon at all? I mean, they're an Irish publisher. I mean, the whole story of how I hooked up with them is a whole other story. And then They were delayed by the pandemic. It's a small operation. They also have a bookstore, and then they had to move out of their existing bookstore, which is also where the publisher is based. And so they've had all these setbacks, you know, and they take, there's not a lot of them involved, and so they take things kind of slow, and then they bounce back great. So I think this manuscript has moved up to the top of the pile now, such as it is. And so, but I don't have a definitive date yet. So I'm gonna fingers crossed say next year. Hopefully.
I'm excited.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I will take that excitement and I'll move myself off the screen and we'll let you embark on your next set. Thank you.
I'm gonna use a timer for this one because I will follow poetry with poetry, and I will. Larry was talking about, you know, in as much as you're allowed to like your own work, and I unabashedly love this work, which is translating poetry. I often tell my students that in I went, you know, there are lots of schools, lots of places where they can be competitive. Iowa is kind of notorious for like the competition, and having gone there for two MFAs, I can attest to like the competition and the intensity of the workshops of nonfiction where I went. But when I entered the classroom in translation, it was such a warm and welcoming place. I had no idea what to do with a workshop that was just so phenomenally encouraging. And I think the difference is that you're all on the same side, which is championing the work that has spoken to you. And when it comes to literary translation, where there is absolutely no money whatsoever, the only reason that you like translate something, at least in my experience, is that you read something and you love it so much and you want others to love it, but they don't have access. So it's all about like creating greater access. And I'm going to read these poems. I translated all of them in, I think, the first 6 months of season one of this administration, back in 20, whenever it was, 2016, um, 17 maybe, I don't know, time, um, because back when this things were happening for the first time, I had to go back to Colombia to help my mother with many of the life things that happened. There was death, that there was like a move, or there was something that my mother couldn't do alone. And the one thing that academia has given me is the flexibility to be able to go back home when I am needed, for which I am grateful, regardless of anything else that happens. I went home, and my grandmother's was sort of like deep into her dementia, and I was sitting in the shrine of her home. You know, there were um, virgins and saints and Jesus on crosses everywhere, because this was what she valued, and it was this shrine of things she loved and valued, but it was also like really beautiful and uniquely kitschy, and gold leaf in every corner. It was exuberant and rococo. It was excessive in every way that I have come to love. And as I was sitting there, missing a person who has not yet gone, but is not present enough to tell you that they can miss you back, I heard on the radio for the very first time the notion of shithole countries. I heard it while sitting in a shithole country, surrounded by the things my grandmother loved most. My grandmother was my first literature. I had very likely a very serious case of ADHD as a child, and I could not sit still long enough to read, not long enough to do anything. I was constantly like brought home uh, unconscious because I'd climbed too high and fallen off trees and fences and, you know, pipes, whatever it is that I was doing. But the one thing that I could always like calm down and sit long enough to listen were my grandmother's stories. And it was so cognitively devastating to hear how easy it was to say shithole country, third world country, nowhere places, nowhere lands, trying to escape, you know, places where it has been easy to start wars and then blame those who escaped those wars as if it had been them, they themselves, who had any hand in any of it. So I'm sitting in this place and I feel the most familiar rage. I was so angry that this woman who had given me so many stories, my very first stories, who did not have the means to speak up, who did not even fully feel the words that were being said, but all that she loved was encompassed. And it was so dismissive. It was nothing. It was permission. Because when something has no value, it's permission to throw it away. And I felt sort of like the motion of it in that moment. And it's very difficult to argue with an argument that is unreasonable. If you commit to arguing with unreason, you cannot win with reason. And how do you convince someone that you're human? How do you convince someone that you have value? How do you convince someone who believes you don't have value that you have value enough for them to hear the argument that you have value? Especially when all of value is equated in capitalist terms. So I very angrily had an irrational response, but to me, the only way to engage with this unreason was with sort of like the obvious parts of unreason, which is to say that humanity is not infrastructure, that our value isn't in the GDP of our countries. We are people, and we have value beyond that. And I needed like concrete evidence of that. And to me, that's always been poetry. You don't need highways for poetry. You don't need industry. You barely need paper and pen, right? You just like poetry sort of explodes. It's always geysering up from society, from people, because metaphors, I tell my students 10,000 times a day, are the confession of the failure of language. When we use metaphors, what we're really saying is we don't have enough words to say to encompass our experience, our life, our existence as humans. So we need to create meaning by approximation. This is similar to, this is like this, it is almost, but not quite. And poetry is the highest form of metaphor. Always meaning by approximation, and always a negation of the concreteness of this is valuable because it's worth $10, $20, $10 billion. This is valuable because it cannot be quantified. That's poetry. And you cannot write poetry without like confessing both the failure and the existence of whatever ineffable thing that has been called soul for however millions, thousands, I don't know, however many, however you quantify like the existence of literature. So with that said, and having spent most of that time, I'm only going to read a few poems from what I did back then, which I called 100 Reputations. I think they speak for themselves. I only give context for the reason why I translated them, but you cannot explain approximations. They do all that they must do. This first one is called One, poem number 1, from Guerras y Olvidos by Aida Párraga, a Salvadorian poet. I think of that war, the one chasing us all, in all the ways it can chase. It's time to forget, the delicate dove has told us. But what did doves know of the taste of blood, of the smell of midnight screams? What do they know if they wake up in their nests and humankind in a ditch? This next one is called Before the Sea by Crisma Mancia, who's a Salvadorian poet. I am a foreigner in the promised city, with suitcases full of desiccated crabs. But in the empire of closed windows, everything is rough. And when I go into the streets, I double bolt the door and try to forget the mermaid trapped in the bathroom pipes. And I am nostalgia when I painlessly deliver myself to the ordinary abyss of corners. And I am nostalgia when I fulfill my duty of being a good citizen. Ugh. This one is Enrique Noriega. He's a Guatemalan poet, and I love this poem. If you have a chance to look it up, it's somewhere online because I published it however many years ago. It has a really interesting shape, and I can't describe that to you. I could, but it takes too long. Just look at it. It's called A Man Dressed in White. A man dressed in white looks like the inside of a doctor's clinic, but only that looks like a liter of milk. From back when my grandmother bought her own liters of milk, but only that looks like the severe mourning of a Japanese man, but only that. Looks like the fondled dove of peace, but only that. Looks like the nightmare of the blank page of the writer who produces nothing, but only that. Looks like a tortured mind emptied of screen, but only that. Because you would have to know a man dressed in white is only that, a man dressed in white, and that a child from the streets of Rio de Janeiro or of Guatemala with the coup de grace to his temple is only that, a child the street with a coup de grace to his temple. I want to say that it would seem that a man dressed in white or a child in the street with a coup de grace to his temple were something else to a man dressed in white or to a child from the street with a coup de grace to his temple. But what doubt could there be? A man dressed in white is only that, and a child from the street with a coup de grace to his temple also is only that. I think I'll only read 2 more, and I'll somehow hopefully still be within the time limit. This is my favorite poem. I translated it. I think I've mentioned it to Larry's class. I translated it. I read the poem's title, and I emailed the poet right away asking for permission to translate it. This is by Lina Ferreira. She's Panamanian, a land of phenomenal poems. And the title was just so good. I thought nothing bad can follow a title that good. And I sent the email and immediately read the poem, and I felt, yes, correct. I'm a big believer in judging things by the cover and the title as well. Here it goes. It's beautiful. The existential nothingness of crafts. I make verses in the air. They crackle toward the infinite prophecy, crackling, crackling. I dance, building with my feet a trampoline of clouds. I twirl like a ram. Now I am a she Christ, now navigator, now face up, now about to expire. My wings leveled in a dive. Yesterday, again, I leapt from the bridge of the Americas. Today, I stare at my naked feet upon the earth. I write plummeting parachute poems. I will not return to the place of the butterflies. I think I can sneak this in. This is New York by Demetrio Corsi. It's Panamanian heavy, but I translated from every country in Latin America that spoke, and I think I found translators and poets that spoke other languages that I didn't. But today, Panama spoke to me, so this is why I chose it. This is called New York by Demetrio Corsi. It was published in 1950s, I think. Triumphs of the light, capitalized by Edison, in the virginal bosom of the ferry boat. Skyscrapers, 5-cent built. How many projects crash against your walls? Within you, they all roar, oh, great New York, the machinery and the hunger. Statue of Liberty, your light is not for the South. Cut off your arm. And this is the last poem I'll read. This is by Alfonsina Storni. She's an Argentine poet. And it's about small, fragile, egoed men who are so fragile that they have to take it out on everybody else around them. Here goes. Little Man by Alfonsina Storni. Little man, little man, set me free, your canary, your canary, for she wants to fly, for I am her little man. Let me leap. I've been in your cage, little man who gives me a cage. I say little because you have neither understood me nor will you ever understand. I don't understand you either, but in the meantime, open for me this cage. I want to escape. Little man. I loved you half a wing's worth. Don't ask me for more.
Oh, I'm writing down in my notebook, I loved you half a wing's worth. Don't ask me for more. It's beautiful.
It's really great to read other people's work because then you can just unabashedly say, "Isn't that so good? Isn't that so good?"
It's like playing a cover version,
Yeah.
and when you're in a band, you get to play somebody else's song and make it your own too.
Hmm. I have so many volumes of poetry because when I started translating, I was like, oh, this needs to be in the public domain. So I have so many volumes of like tattered old leathery things. And then when the Scorsi poem, New York, Cut Off Your Arm, the first time I read it, I was like, when was this written? Like, what was this prophetic? And it isn't prophetic. It's always the same. It just hasn't changed. But it was devastating and strange and to recognize. Was the thing that Baldwin says, that I thought I was alone in the world, and then I read.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, a lot of that company tends to be tragic.
Yeah. Speaking of, what was the name of the Argentinian poet, the last one, number 6 that you read?
Uh,
What was her name?
Alfonsina Storni.
Alfonsina Storni.
Storni. She's one of the most famous poets. And between Argentina and Uruguay, they produced like more female poets in the 1900s than I think any other country in Latin America. It was pretty wild.
Good stuff. All right.
All right.
Okay, I'll get started on my next round. All right, this is I'm picking up right where I left off this is chapter 1 of my memoir, which is called The Land of California, even though it's about Chicago. Strange but true. You gotta read the whole book to figure that why that's true. But anyway, chapter 1. We'll get to California, I promise. I spent 7 months out there, and I do mean spent, in Oakland, renting a pistachio green bungalow that had wrought iron burglar bars bolted across every window, door, and possible orifice of entrance. And if I hadn't rented that place out there, I never would have bought this one here on the south side of Chicago in a trailer park. Not a real trailer park. The real parks are on the fringes of Chicagoland, that 10,000 square mile quilt of Oak Grove Glen Park forests that surrounds us, out where lazy boy showrooms and toilet paper superstores sit side by side with cornfields. The parks out there are literally trailer parks, like the one I worked at in Texas when I was 12 years old, picking up beer cans and dog turds for $2.50 an hour, where I scoured a dead man's sink with Comet, trying to eradicate the smell of his life, where I unpinned the penthouse pet the missionaries had thrown buck knives at until she and the living room wall behind her were in tatters, where I inquired trepidatiously about the possibility of the rent from the guy who was swigging from a long neck while he was pissing off his front steps at the same time, like an uncircumcised limestone cherub tinkling in an old lady's flower garden. That was a trailer park. This is a 3-story apartment building, a condo, my 2.5 bedroom share in one, my 1/18th of the capitalist, but also socialist collective we call a homeowners association. One of 5.25 million homes sold in that year's $2 trillion housing market. Not a data point so much as a data speck, a data iota, almost completely insignificant, and therefore pretty emblematic. When my friends asked me, "What's your new place like?" I told them it was every 2 or 3 bedroom apartment I'd ever been in, combined. Been in Chicago, that is, in the 90s, when we were all in our 20s. It had the same scarred oak floors we had slid across in our socks, sloshing our drinks and scaring the cat The silver radiators that clanked and hissed as we explained ourselves for the 1,000th time to whatever tear-streaked soon-to-be ex was hugging their knees on our futon. The faucets that screeched when we turned them on and off, making the pipes in the wall shudder. The chalky white wall paint we woke up to stare at blankly. The toilet handle we'd had to remember to jiggle. I told my friends, remember every dinner party, Halloween party, and New Year's Eve party they'd ever had one too many at. Every living room they'd ever watched Sosa, Homer in, or Rodman rebound in, their eyes watering from the weed the friend of their friend had just paid $50 for to the guy coughing his lungs out on the couch. Add up all those places and divide, and you had mine. Totally average. Which is actually pretty good, because most apartments here were built when marble and old-growth oak and maple were affordable as the army of skilled craftsmen who cut, carved, and lay it all. The average Chicago apartment is a fossil, a remnant of an era of architectural intelligence, elegance, and permanence that's impossible now. And not even permanent anymore. Now that the developers are knocking them down as fast as they can, replacing them with plywood and cinder block erections. Tall skinnies in industry parlance, like the tall skinny cafe lattes the real estate agents clutch, seemingly by city ordinance at every staging, every showing, and every closing. As a leaded glass window restorer named Rory put it, while he was vacuuming up paint chips from my windowsill, when places like this are gone, they're gone forever. These old buildings are a non-renewable resource. The facade of this one had corbels, roundels, and finials, and other things I didn't know the names of yet. Limestone curlicues around the heavy lobby door, which opened onto marble steps that had grown cloudy with age, like the whites of an old man's eyes. Faux mahogany wainscoting, shellacked so glossily that even now, 80 years later, I could see my misshapen reflection in its amber, lit by the brass chandelier overhead. Fluted pilasters on the inner lobby door, which also had a full-length mirror on either side of them, in case my date and I wanted to check the rake of my fedora or the drape of her mink before we stepped out on the town or into someone's parlor. The place was dingy, but it still had the Ritz. So did the other two lobbies, which also led to 3 floors, with 2 3-bedrooms per floor, for a total of 18 units, each of them a 1/7 or an 1/8 of what they'd cost in LA, and a 15th of what they'd sell for in New York, and about half what they were going for up on the north side, which is where I'd been living for the last 7.5 years when my friend told me about this place. An unfucking believable deal, he called it. I don't think he used the word steal. That was someone else. He also didn't call it a trailer. Why would he? It was made out of brick, not sheet metal. It didn't sit on cinder blocks. It rested on a stone foundation whose walls were as thick as a castle's. It wasn't in a trailer park. It was in Hyde Park, this bluest city's bluest neighborhood. Michelle Obama's neighborhood, as a matter of fact. She lived over on Eastview Park Terrace with her husband, who, according to my friends who worked for her at Public Allies, was an interesting guy in his own right. Going places. Point being, this place was urban, not rural. Sure, each unit was 1,000 square foot rectangle. The exact same size, shape, and layout as a double wide trailer. But that was just a coincidence. I'm done.
Wow. I was just, thinking, the word immersive came into mind, like with your style, your work. And just as I'm kind of getting caught up in it, and I'm picturing what you're writing about, and then you'll toss in something else. I'm just getting caught up, and then you're like, okay, that's it for right now. I mean, I think that's a quality that's hard, and you can identify that again across genres. But that sense of being able to like pull your readers in, I think that's really present in the stuff that you do. And what I heard you do before, and what I'd read previously to us actually meeting, and then in this, it's really pretty compelling, I think.
Oh,
I hope you feel that. I think you wouldn't be pursuing it like you are if it didn't. At least that. Yeah, I mean, how we feel about our own work, I already intimated at that. I mean, I hate most of what I do, but I still do it. But I think that's one of the qualities I admire in your work. It just kind of pulls me in.
oh, good. Well, it's impossible for me to know, because trying to be the judge of my own work is like, it's like sniffing your own armpit. You can't tell what it smells like. Everybody else can, but you can't. I just thought you would like, it did have the word erection in it, which really stood out to me on
Yes,
this
yeah,
reading.
pun intended there, right? Yeah.
Tall
Yes, I
cinder
noticed that.
block erections.
What's so funny is that whenever I do these readings, and it could be not just the nature of this one with the round robin um, um, uh, setup, but is that how things do speak to each other. Pieces will end up
Yeah.
mirroring each other, maybe not in tone or whatever, but it's like, wait a minute, the grocery stores or
Yes.
language, and it's definitely, if you go back to the music motif, which I brought up, and also the notion of a round robin is kind of, I think, more associated with music. But I've been at plenty of shows where people, and particularly maybe round robins, where you'll play a piece, and then someone will go like, you know what, I'm changing up what I was going to do because of Larry's song or something like that, and
Mhm.
then they pull out something else. But I think, and I've seen that done in literary situations too. But I think it's just interesting how just without us, with by no design, there's things that just end up relating to each other.
They do. And there's like rhymes, like there's like, maybe it's not rhyme, maybe it's assonance, or I'm not a poet, but like there's always these little kind of rhymes that nobody planned. And if you just follow those, you get a composition out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Assonance, the repetition of vowel sounds.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus, as I tell students all the time, my favorite like a literary term to use, because the word ass is in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who can't, that always gets a laugh. So that's good. Break the ice. Well, my friend, I will, it sounds great. I mean, I'm really, really thrilled to hear this. Looking forward to reading the final product. Do you have an ETA for this? I don't remember what you said at the beginning, or you're just like, this is.
I am writing the last chapter right now.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So I should have that done by the end of the month. And then I think I'm going to spend a few months revising it. Hope to send it out, fingers crossed, around the new year.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Your new book. Yeah.
Hope so. Yeah, I don't have a publisher or anything. So I'm just,
Wing it.
yeah.
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 Doing the work.
Yes. But it's been it's funny. I haven't really read this stuff for just early chapters for a couple years now. So
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned that before about like hearing it aloud. What is it like to come back to it like this?
it still needs work, but it sounds different than the later chapters. It's more formal.
Mhm.
It's less casual. It seems less fluent. It seems like it's a little, I hadn't quite found my rhythm, but that's easy to fix.
Yeah.
So
Especially when you get that deep into something, and things establish their own kind of. I mean, I think, again, not to always make it about all genres, but I think things have that kind of. It's sometimes hard to know, until you actually get into the piece, whatever the length. But I mean, length matters. And then it can be different from what you'd envisioned, and I think often the best plan of attack is to go with the thing that feels right. You can plan in advance, but your plans can't get in the way of where the piece goes.
Yes,
You have
to make the plan so that you can abandon it, but you have to make it first.
Yes. Well said. All right, Dan, I'm gonna let you take a break, and then we'll see you for the final pass. I'm already getting teary-eyed thinking about it. Okay. Speaking of final passes, this is mine. So I've got 2 poems for this one, again from this forthcoming book. The longest one I'm going to read, which is really that's a relative term because it's not that long, is the first one, and then another one that's in line with the shorter pieces that I've been reading. And when again I was planning this set, and I look back to what I read for the last edition of this, I read a couple pieces from this manuscript. And they're ones I tend to read when I'm going to read from it. And then the pieces I decided to read tonight are ones that I have not necessarily read, not necessarily because I'm waiting for the book itself to come out, but it's just when I've read from it, I lean into this stuff that I feel, I mean, ultimately, I guess I feel more comfortable with. So of these 2, one of them is one I've read before, but this one, it doesn't get read often. If I have read it before, it's been a while. And it's called DC Meets Spuds MacKenzie. So I'm not sure what the impetus was for this. I love persona poems. So this is definitely a persona poem. The persona in this case would be Spuds MacKenzie. If people are encountering this and they don't know what that refers to, it's easy enough to find out. And then the DC refers to Dick Clark. Again, if you don't know who that is, it's easy enough to find out. So I think I came across this video clip somehow. I'm a wormholer, I get down there, and it inspired it. So DC meets Spuds MacKenzie. What a woebegone night. Clark, that dense dullard, serious as sin, introduced me as the guru of good times, chancellor of charm, sage of sophistication, laughing at that one. How unprofessional. Then, everybody's favorite party animal. That was Bud's tagline. He didn't know me from Adam. The crowd went nuts, though. The applause sign was lit. I slumped and yawned through most of it, decked out in that tacky tuxedo. It was hot under all those lights. I think I was high, too. Hollywood. The girls, Spudettes, were there, the 3 Bs, blonde, brunette, and black, hired to appeal to targeted demographics. I peed a tad on the brownie. She never broke character on air, but you can see it on her face, just a faint twitch. A real pro. She knew who wrote the checks. What can I say? I had to go, and they weren't about to cut and do another take without a better reason. Cheapskates. Dick was doing his mightiest Edward R. Murrow. There are these vicious rumors. You pick up the tabloids at the supermarket checkout stands, and is there any truth to the fact that he is a female? Wouldn't it be truth to the rumor? I'm not a writer, just the talent. Look for my name on the dressing room door. The gals deflected, improv their jokes, and unless they popped off my tiny trousers on primetime television, it was a non-starter. Dipshit. I was informed the week prior Bubbles the chimp had been on, sitting in my seat, a fellow with extraordinary talent, Clark cooed in all solemnness. Michael Jackson's part-time monkey pal. Yeah, talent. Did Bubbles sing, dance, moonwalk? He can curl his lip, roll his tongue. Paging Jane Goodall. Monkey see, monkey do. No one cops to whatever happened at Neverland. Give that boy a banana and call it a day. Hooray. Then, as soon as it started, it was over. Our host stood, giving the cue to the Spudettes, chiming in unison, "Party right, party cool, but remember," he prompted, "know when to say when." That's called a disclaimer. Cue the canned music and on to the next schmuck. It's a living. Later in the limo, I lapped from a bespoke bowl, tucks neatly folded and put away, while the fillies took turns hand feeding me gram checks, killing time on Anheuser-Busch's dime. It was a clause in their contracts, but I never heard him complain. All right. So here we go. Last, I'd be tempted to say, but not least, but it's definitely least, but last. This is called Yoga is Not Stretching. I overheard somebody say this, and it inspired this poem. And then we'll go back to Lina. Yoga is not stretching, she said while stretching to the cadre of eager yogacolites, gnarled, wrenched, and bent in consent to her command. Yoga is not stretching, she spoke softly, sotto voce, like it was a secret to be shared only among the most limber stretchers in the class. Bowing her pliant body, she spun on one leg toward the sun, yelling, "Yoga is not stretching!" So even the remotest stretcher in the rear could hear. All right. My work is done.
That was really good.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, trying to think back in the origins of these. I like to talk. I like it at readings when people get into the makings of things, but I don't want it to overwhelm anything at the same time. But as much as hearing the stuff aloud, inspires things or tells me things, it gets me back thinking, yeah, where did that come from? I mean, it's easier. It's easier enough for me to think of, oh yeah, because I have another book that's done that is really, I mean, I think Salmon would publish it, but doesn't seem like it's Salmon material. And that was like a thematic one. So that gave me an overall approach. But like these, like thinking back, oh yeah, I definitely remember the person yelling that out though. Like one of those things you'll overhear. And they call that the cocktail party phenomenon. Have you ever heard this phrase where it's like it can be a really busy environment, but if somebody says something like that you recognize, it'll like sound, you hear it. So I remember being out and it was this kind of, suddenly I heard someone say yoga is not stretching, and I just thought something about that just stuck with me. So
I think the thread that has been really interesting listening to like your selection of poems is repetition. It has that semantic saturation, the meaning where things aren't normally meaningful, and I think your work masquerades with a certain lightness that I really enjoy. I think people shouldn't be allowed to read alone. I think reading should never happen with just one writer, and they should definitely not be with writers that write similarly. Like no one looks at a plate and goes, what good would go well with this steak, more steak piled on top. I mean, some people do actually, but no one eats mashed potatoes with a side of mashed potatoes. Like surely that is not a thing that happens. And I write really heavy and I live really light. So like people are often like surprised, like by the end of the reading, I'm like, yeah, I got the poison out. Now if you want us to like deal with, and I feel much better. And also if I lived heavy and I wrote heavy, I sink and die. But when you are just like writing poison and like metabolizing it, having that lightness, even if it is masquerading, I think yours is. I think there's like a real weight to an erection is an erection is an erection is an erection, and yoga isn't stretching. I do think that like the contrast makes the reading a lot better. It makes me hear Dan's writing more clearly.
yeah. Oh, that's nice to hear. I think I like that idea and relate to it. That yeah, and I think that is true. Yeah, some people would have steak with steak, but it does
Yeah.
make when it's a more varied meal. And these things can be planned, and it's like, oh yeah, that'd be an interesting person to have read with.
Yeah.
think sometimes people, and also maybe by design, given the series, they do pick stuff that's kind of in the same, tone, the same timbre or whatever.
Yeah.
That can be fine too. But I love the notion of, I mean, not to make it all about music too, but I mean, as much as I'll go to a show and it'll be like, oh, I see why they booked these other acts.
Mm.
I almost wish it would be like wildly divergent. I mean, I like
Yes.
that. I know other people wouldn't, but I think
Well, I think the idea of complementary colors has been lost a little bit. And I think that that's pretty similar to like my students writing. They're like, well, this is dark, so I'm going to write dark
yeah,
things in dark colors. And I'm like, then you can't see anything, right? Like you need contrast. Yeah, I think about that a lot in my own writing. And I'm going to end with a piece that is I'm going to end by failing to exemplify the thing I was just trying to say, where I'm like, this one's lighter, and I think it's only lighter in that I'm writing about my own very anchored personal like struggle instead of look at the war, look at all the agony of everybody around you. No, 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 turn away from them. This is mine. But
you're
I think that it's a little bit lighter in that I'm okay.
you're bringing it back home here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
back and in fact, yeah, this was written in Chicago. This was written only a few months ago. And it has, I think, I'm glad that even though I think that we're very different writers, the Chicago through line is really interesting to me because I think a lot about the type of writer I become since living in Chicago. It's a distinct influence, and it's hard to phrase because it isn't that I'm reading Chicago writers and my own accent and like inability to understand idioms at a time hasn't changed, but the architecture, the traffic has like really manipulated a little bit of my language.
I think that's interesting, and I'll let you get to it here. But it is, I mean, it's people talk about Chicago as being a good literary town, and I think that's
Mm.
true. That's been true consistently. Like it may have had moments when the Green Mill or whatever people were really paying attention, but that's more the consumerist approach. It seems like it's had a really steady, especially with working class writers, a steady pulse beat for years and years and years. But I think it's interesting how a place can affect one. I mean, I'm not
Mhm.
from I mean, I came here from California, but I was born in Michigan. And I think, and then you're super international. And you see how, um, again, not to get too far down the path here, but the things we bring with us and then the things we take when we're in a new place. I think there's a lot here that's inspirational in the most general sense of the word, but I don't mean to demean the word. There's just
Mm-mm.
to take from here. And I know there's places where that's not the case. you know um, it's a pretty helpful environment ultimately, even though there's perhaps things that are not great too, but yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
Rather be here than in some places of the country where people email me to ask
can I
if they
come
can
there?
come to
Yeah,
Chicago.
okay, we
Yeah.
could have a place for me. Listen, all right, well, let me let you get to it, and then we'll meet up at the end for the big fireworks stuff or whatever.
Great.
I've got to figure it out.
Okay. I know I went a little over on the last one, but I clocked this one at exactly 5 minutes. I'm hoping that to regain something there. This is called Red, and I wrote it as a prompt for Orion Magazine, and they published it because they're really, really lovely. And if you don't know Orion Magazine, you should go read it because they're just really fantastic. As a side note, it talks about me hitting puberty early, and I forgot about this when my father-in-law recently visited and said, "Oh, I had a magazine like laying around." I'm like, "Oh yeah, they just published an essay," and they're like, "Oh, can I read it?" Completely forgot, and then I had to find out later how incredibly uncomfortable this made him. So my apologies to my very lovely father-in-law. Red. I was born red, 1 month ahead of schedule, and meant to be a boy. I grew up reading hand-scribbled notes my mother wrote to him while she was pregnant with me, hearing stories about the little brother that never came. Instead, me, a premature, nameless lump in a Colombian hospital. First, black plum-colored, then crimson blue, and finally, red. For weeks and weeks after, ruby rust and beetroot blood, ahead of schedule and gasping for breath. So they called me La Niña, like a baby Spanish galleon in a bedside bassinet. But my father said to my mother. It's been more than a week. We can't just keep calling her it, baby, girl. So instead, he called me Scarlet for the color of my skin and Pimpernel after a wayside flower. Just until, he told my mother, you find her real name. Before I was anything, I was a little brother. Before I was Lina, I was a wayside flower. Because I was born red, grew up, and stayed red. After I turned yellow-eyed and pale-skinned, red-raged and red-faced underneath, crying when my mother tried to braid my hair, yelling when she put me in a dress, red and quiet when she begged me to stop, running wild with wild neighborhood boys. But when the kids by the playground merry-go-round yelled, boys versus girls, last one standing, I came home, and I came home soaked in victory and vomit. She said, I am proud of you. She said, good girl. So I kept climbing trees and fences and rusty rebar wonderlands behind construction sites. Kept going until blood dripped down my battered shins, until the palms of my hands bubbled as if they were boiling over, until I convinced myself that there were no differences between us. Until I was correct, until, hey, you, the boys in the playground started yelling, Oiga usted, poking their fingers into my chest, pushing me back against the wall. What are you? Blisters bloomed and bruises blossomed. I climbed higher. I ran faster. Because, the wild neighborhood boys told me, this is what it means to be a boy. So I picked up bricks and stones. I sharpened sticks to points. I ran the razor edge of a tuna can lid along a salted slug's back while they cheered around me. Because this is what it takes, they told me, to become a man. I dragged the rusty edge until something popped. I swung from the monkey bars until all my blisters burst. Then I sat on the grass watching bits of spider legs jerking and twitching, bits of rust dissolve into the serum sap pooling in the palm of my hand. A boy or a girl? Cherry syrup, crimson honey, and the pale blue blood of martyred slugs. Hey, what's wrong with you? They asked me. What are you? Tell us. A bull dyke, then. Marimacha lesbiana. Their first insult was dyke. My first swear word was fag. I didn't know what dyke meant, but it hurt when they said it. Boy, sometimes, if I ran fast enough, if I scored enough goals, since that's what you're trying to be anyway, boy. And it almost felt like a compliment. I didn't know what fag meant either, but I knew it would hurt them if I said it, so I said it because I knew being a girl would get me hurt regardless. I grew up in a narrow place, in a narrow time. To lose was to be weak was to be girl, to be strong was to be boy, to be strong when you were meant to be weak was to be wrong. What are you then? Monstrous, red, thin, petaled, and deep-rooted. And I did use to imagine myself as a boy. No blisters, all callous. Then two boys took me back behind the school fence to show me their penises. Well, I don't want that. Then I hit puberty at 8, and a doctor slid his fat fingers into the waistband of my underpants to check for pubic hair. It won't hold forever, he shook his head, but maybe a year or two with a proper diet. At the pool, I held my arms tight to my sides. I kept my head down and my knees close together while boys whispered and stared. If that's what her armpits look like, just imagine her cunt. Well, I don't want this either. What then? Then what? The first time I heard a man had poured acid on his ex-girlfriend's face in Colombia, I felt the air knocked out of me, as if it didn't make sense that this would make sense to him. We grew up in a narrow place, in a narrow time. This is what it takes to be a man. Red boiling, salt stung, and the wet edge of a tin can on sunburned skin. What would Jacob do? I was born nameless, with dull yellow eyes and red skin. I turned white as a larva's underbelly, pale as bone chalk, and I stayed red underneath. Then, Lina, my mother said, after the trickling sound of water, por cómo nos haces reír, because I was a funny baby, red and risible. Because it is a serious world, so Lina, she said, that's your name. Though she never calls me that. Instead, wayside flower, red petal weed.
You're a tough act to follow, Lina. Your father-in-law got the full story there. That's good.
Yeah,
It was
he's
good
so
for him.
uncomfortable.
It was good for him, right?
I don't know. He didn't really look me in the eye the next morning, and it didn't occur to me until my partner came and whispered, going like, "Do you know what he read?" And I'm like, "No, they published something. I don't know, probably about war." No, no. The fat fingers apparently made him quite uncomfortable. In my defense, they also made me uncomfortable.
Yeah, that they made me uncomfortable what they're supposed to. That's good. That was good for him. Is he a reader or not really?
No, he watches a lot of sci-fi. But I think
No.
there's just it's a different. I grew up relatively poor, but a lot of books. Like my mother read me my father read me the Iliad when I was like 7. And one of my most vivid memories is him explaining there's a line, at least in Spanish translation, Hector gets struck, right, with I think it's Hector, a lance, a javelin, a spear. And the line is, he was struck in the place where the soul escapes the body the fastest. And I remember him being so excited and leaning, going like, "Do you know what that means?" to me and my older sister. "Do you know where that place is?" And we're like, "No, this is horrifying." They're like, "It's the neck. It's the neck. That's the place where the soul escapes the fastest." So to me, like, this is all very normal, and I forget that isn't the way a lot of people grew up.
Wow. I in a former life, I used to write about comic books, and that poem, I think poems in general actually lend themselves to adaptation in comic book form really well, but I think that one in particular does.
The Iliad.
No, your poem. I mean, the Iliad.
Oh.
No, definitely not the Iliad. That's too much work. But your poem, like,
Oh, I think at least Orion published it as an essay, so I'm hoping that it's just a little bit lyrical. But you know what my favorite adaptation is? There's a comic book adaptation of Paradise Lost, and it's spectacular. It's by a Spanish author. Um, we live very close to one another. We should actually hang out in person.
I would, yeah. It has to be shorter. Wow. Paradise Lost is already really long. If you add pictures, it's going to get twice as long.
Interestingly, it's not very long and it has very few words. So the adaptation, I think, was like trying to capture a picture like is worth 1,000 words. So the every 500 words in Paradise Lost, it captures in like a tiny frame. It's really beautiful. I have, I think, 2 copies that I'm happy to part with for you.
Yeah, we could get into the weeds on this, but yeah, the adaptation of your poem, like if it was in color, I mean, obviously there would have to be red in it. I don't know if you'd even need the word red in it if it was red, but anyway, thank you for that. That gave me a window into your childhood.
It was mostly okay for the record.
Well, but childhood's completely crazy
Yeah.
and wild and savage and ruthless. So that captured that.
I ran very wild, so I had a lot of fun between the concussions. But I'm really excited to hear you close this. I think you have a narrative succinctness that I'm deeply envious of.
Okay, well, this takes place on the University of Chicago campus, so you'll be able to relate. All right, continuing. This is picking up on my first chapter a little later. After I moved to the South Side, this book started to be about crime. Not ones that happened, ones that didn't happen, that almost happened. Like the guy with yellow eyeballs who asked me if I had a cigarette. And when I didn't, lifted me up by my collar and said he wasn't playing with me, man. Or the cop who drove past my stoop while 2 guys were mugging me on it. giving the guys pause, and me just enough time to break free and run away. Or the kid who ran up to my wife with a baseball bat, cocked and ready to swing, just to see if she'd flinch. I had the epigraph for that version of this book ready to go. James Baldwin saying, "To defend oneself against a fear is simply to ensure that one day one will be conquered by it." Then someone broke into my office on campus with a gigantic screwdriver and stole that version of this book. Actually, they stole the laptop I'd written it on, along with my one and only backup drive. Goodbye, book. Goodbye, crimes that almost happened. I spent the whole day dealing with cops, Chicago cops, but also University of Chicago cops. The third largest public police force in the country and the third largest private police force in the world, both covering the same 3.5 square miles. The only place on earth with more private police protection than right here is the Vatican. The Vatican and Disney World, making the only guy on earth with more police protection than me, the Pope, and Snow White, and Mickey Mouse, and Goofy. Cops clanked in and out of my office, radios squawking. Detectives and administrators asked me to tell them what happened, which was obvious. "Look at that screwdriver," I said. "It's as big as my forearm." At one point, I started taking notes. Things like, "This is what writing about Chicago always boils down to, writing in the middle of a crime scene," which was cute, but too obvious. The last cop to arrive was the evidence tech, the fingerprint guy. "You can probably get one off that dirty magazine over there," I told him. They took it out of the wrapper and thumbed through it. The cover of this magazine was a painting in the style of Frank Frazetta, a painting of a Mexican guy holding a smoking rifle he had just shot a gringo dead with. He was getting a blowjob from a naked woman, while another naked woman was injecting his outstretched arm with a syringe full of who knows what. Something good, judging by the smirk on his face. Don't ask me what this magazine was doing in my office. Okay, ask. I was hoping to get tenure out of it. I'd commissioned the painting myself in Mexico City, and I'd written 40,000 words of art criticism about it, and about the Mexican comic book industry in general. The magazine was part of my writing portfolio. The biggest part, now that my book about crime had been stolen. Almost no one had read it. No one but the thief, that is, who'd stopped mid-burgle to take it out of its protective mylar wrapper and thumb through it. I loved the fact that he'd done this. Also, the thought that because he'd done it, he might wind up behind bars. This fantasy must have been written all over my face, because the evidence tech looked up from his powder brush and his pen light and said, "The best thing to do is sit and wait in that chair over there, or outside." Pronounced over dare. Outside. From out in the hallway, I overheard him say, "Got one. Might be the bad guys." It wasn't. The print on the magazine turned out to be mine. Whether or not it's still a bad guys, that's for you to decide. After the evidence tech left, the carpenters came, white guys, South Side, born and raised. You could tell by the way they pronounced the word guy, like it was a Japanese word. Guy. 3 guys going, "Guy this, guy that. Hey, guy." The guy hammering a sheet of plywood over the hole in my door said, "I bet someone from housekeeping was in on it. It was an inside job. Had to be. He stared at me, holding his hammer, daring me to say something. When I didn't, he said, "What? You think they don't got friends who are into this shit?" Actually, I did think that, but I didn't say that. I didn't say anything. After the guys left, they came. Housekeeping. A woman, black, so soft spoken, I almost didn't hear her say, almost to herself, while she was sweeping up splinters and sawdust, "I bet students did it. They knew what they were doing. They knew where they were going, what they wanted. It was an inside job." I thanked her. Then I latched my brand new deadbolt behind her, and I spent the next 2 years rewriting this book from scratch, starting with the scene I just read. The guy who broke into this room and stole that version of this, along with the laptop it was stored on, used a crowbar, judging by the bite marks it left in my door frame. I banged open the fire door at work one morning, and I saw sunbeams streaming like the light of Jesus through the clouds on a church calendar, illuminating a heap of fragrant, freshly splintered lumber where my door had been. The first thing I felt was relief. This was happening again and again. It wasn't all in my imagination. I wasn't being paranoid. Not yet, anyway. Later, when I told our babysitter about the break-in, she said, "It's a good thing you weren't in there working. One night, my classics professor happened to be in her office. They beat her so bad, her face will never be the same." A sergeant strode through the sunbeams and lowered her chin to the radio on her vest. Squawk. "The victim's here." The victim. No, not me. Not here. Not in my own accounting. I'd rather be guilty of something. Anything. Otherwise, what's the point of telling this story from my point of view? When I took out my phone to call my wife, a cop who'd been standing by quietly all along hissed, "Hey, iPhone, you jailbreak it yet?" I shook my head. No. "Go to blackrain.com, he said. The I in rain is a 1. It lets you make your own icons." He held up his touchscreen to show me his phone, a tiny police badge and a tiny mushroom cloud. When the sergeant, who was black, stepped away for a minute, Officer Black Rain, who wasn't, whispered, "You ask me who did it? They got this program for disadvantaged kids on the first floor. Them are their friends, their older brothers from 63rd and Cottage Grove." He leaned in closer. He put a little Flavor Flav into it. "You know what I'm saying?" Yeah, unfortunately, I did. The end.
Wow. That was great.
Well, I got it back. I rewrote it from scratch, but
Yeah, I think you mentioned, unless I'm misremembering, I think you mentioned this incident that you lost it and you had to completely rewrite it. Is
yeah,
that
twice. It got stolen twice.
wow?
I mean, the second time I had somewhat of a backup, but this was in 2008 and 2010. I'd have to do the math on the numbers, but it was kind of before the cloud. So I had the bad habit of backing up the contents of my laptop onto a backup drive and then leaving my backup drive right next to my laptop.
Yeah.
So they both got stolen.
The absurdity of that has got to really hurt, But I love the cops, very very finely drawn. is kind of not even the best way to put it. Just the dialogue and everything is really rich there. Fantastic.
Chicago, that's that accent. The guys.
Yeah, that like kind of grotesquerie that that's got the element of real to it, but at the same time it just if someone doesn't live here or hasn't experiences, they'd have to they might think, or would have to think, I was going to say, that can't really be it, right? You know?
I struggle with this because I don't like to present the dark side of Chicago because we're already under assault 24/7 on Fox News. But what can I say? You know,
nice circle right back to our conversation before all this started. Yeah, I don't have, you know, this is it, you know, this is the moment when we're done. Do either of you have like any kind of closing thoughts, or anything you like to plug in particular? Like,
Well, before that, can I ask Dan a question? Again, we live really close to each other. We should just have a conversation in like person. But I actually, around the same time I was writing my graduate thesis, and I also lost it. It wasn't stolen. My computer was just really shitty, and it like just went up in flames. Like there's just like a plume of smoke that came out from it. I think I had backed it up, and I got $100 computer on a garage sale, which is not the place to get a computer. And I'm like, okay, great, we covered it. That one also blew up like maybe a few months later, but I had like learned my lesson. But the only thing that I could recover, like it was completely gone, like nothing could be rescued, and I didn't have the money to pay for any of like the people who would know how to recover anything. The only file I could find eventually, because I was like, it's all gone. I have to start writing from memory. So I knew the list of the essays, and I was writing everything that I could remember. And I found one PDF copy in like an email that I'd sent to some, I don't even remember who, but it was also a corrupted PDF copy, so it couldn't be turned back into Word. So I had to retype word for word everything. So I lost it. I started rewriting it, and then from the PDF copy, I had to like retype it word for word. And what was shocking to me was how close my memory like rewrite was to the original. And I don't have any eidetic memory of anything. I started with the idea of like, I know that the essay went in this direction, and then I started like retyping, like fixing the sentences. I thought I knew, but I was arriving at the same conclusions that I had arrived, like working them over and over and over again. And I don't know how to, there's a lesson somewhere in there. I don't know what it is, but it was uncanny.
You arrived at those the same conclusions, but the writing was different, or
No, the sentences, the sentences were identical. The sentences that mattered, where I was like, do I put, okay, this metaphor clearly has to be this, and the word has to, I love alliteration, anaphora, and epistrophe, as like you heard, like I play with those a lot. So I was landing on the same anaphoras and the same epistrophes at the same places. And I think it made me, it was a moment of incredible freedom where things are not fully lost, and you are like, you can arrive at. So I don't think, I'm glad that you're rewriting it. It's a better story, and I can't wait to, the fact that the story of the story has become the story itself is brilliant. And I'm so sorry that you've had to suffer for the art that I will undoubtedly enjoy because of its like all of the theatrical elements of it. But it's also, I don't know, there's a freedom in it that I can't describe.
Well, I mean, the freedom must have been for you to realize, like, I actually have this almost memorized better than I thought. Like, I know I can recreate this much more accurately than I realized, right?
I think the freedom was that a single moment wasn't as precious as I thought it was. That I am the location, and the muse is never external. So I think that was a lot of people were like, I had a brilliant night. You never have a brilliant night. Your brilliance happened that night. It can happen again.
I mean, honestly, the main thing I took away from like getting everything stolen from me twice in 2 years was to go back to writing longhand. Here I go. I started working with longhand, and I was like, nobody's gonna steal that. So
oh, I thought maybe it was a commentary on we supposedly remember things better when we write in longhand. You know, there's the neurological connection when you write. So it's not about the notion of some people would say the antiquated notion of, oh, you should write that in longhand, just don't compose on a computer or whatever. But then it just comes down to, no, you don't want it to be stolen again. So, well, that could give it another layer of value. Now it's actually in your hand. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like depending on who might be wanting to steal it or curious to see it. What is this?
Now there's only one copy of it. Now I have to try to steal it. Like, this is a challenge.
Well, you have the proximity value.
I have the
too,
proximity.
right? That's right.
I just want you to know, Dan, that Shakira's first like major breakthrough album is called Where Are the Thieves? She had written every song longhand, and like when they traveled, she put it in her father's luggage, and that piece of luggage was stolen. And she was under contract to like turn this album over, so she had to do everything within like a very short period of time, like a couple of weeks maybe, and she had to like go by memory, but everything was like, now the album was, this is To the Thieves, where are the Donde están los ladrones, and that was her breakthrough album. That's like how she became an international star, was because of that album that she had to like put together in just like a couple of weeks because someone stole it. So once this becomes a New York Times bestseller, you and Shakira will exist in the same Venn diagram in my head, and I hope this helps somehow. I don't know what is helping, but I hope it helps.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, it's I gotta say, in retrospect, it was a bummer, but it did give me the chance to write a book about, it's a crime story basically, and to begin by saying, yeah, this book about crime's already been stolen twice. That's kind of like, money can't buy that.
Yeah.
It's kind of a good hook.
Is there a book called Steal This Book? I think that title has already taken, right?
Abby Hoffman.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's already taken. So you can't use that title. Actually, titles aren't copyrightable, so you could use it.
That's true. But I wouldn't.
You can steal the title of Steal the Book title.
Hey, if you know Zaid Dorn, Zaid probably has met Abby Hoffman, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd have to ask Zaid to ask Abby, is that okay?
Good.
Can I steal this?
I don't think that's how stealing works, Dan. I think you've learned nothing about stealing, is what I'm hearing. Can't ask for permission.
Yeah. Well,
I have nothing to plug. Protest if you can. Art matters because people matter, not the other way around.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Boy.
I'd like to think it's going to get better. It's hard to feel that at this point, and I'm naturally inclined to be a pessimist anyway. But I mean, this is a case where I'd like my pessimism to be proven wrong. But it's been exhausting, right? Too.
Yeah. It's been a rough summer.
Yeah, but we won't be worn down. I mean, I don't mean to be, platitudinous, but I think people will rise to the challenge.
You win and lose a fight not by how heavy your punch is, but how well you're breathing, and that's how you make it through.
I like that.
Yeah. Well, let's just hope the Texas National Guard. I mean, think about those guys. Like, what's it feel like to get deployed against your own country? I hope they have some conscience, or some qualms. Some of them.
Qualms at least. Might be.
I mean, my hope is the Texas National Guard spend a couple of weeks there and they're like, yeah, this is a really great city. It's not nearly as bad as Fox News has been telling me for the last 20 years.
Pretty easy to disprove anything like that if you just like live it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're again said than done to hope that would be the case and that people aren't.
Yeah, I don't know where they're sending them, but I hope that they get sent specifically to Evanston. Just walk around the like well-watered lawns.
Yeah.
But it's also an opportunity for the UCPD, Chicago and the Chicago Police Department to change like really bad relationships. So I'm trying desperately. I think the hardest thing to be right now is an optimist, and I think if you think about it as a challenge and a difficulty, it's a little bit. It's a an act of rebellion rather than just, it's not sunny side right now. The most rebellious thing that we can do is believe that things might get better.
It's true.
Applies for me. All right. Well, I think that's, I mean, I could keep going down this path for sure, but I'll just say officially, I really appreciate you both being here. I mean, it is like, and so does Oscar or whoever that is. We are in proximity class, but it's not so much about that, but just that you devoted your time to this tonight. I appreciate it. It was a pleasure to hear your work again. And then you're both just, fantastic people as far as I'm concerned. So that's even better for me. So I really appreciate you being here and reading for this.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks so much, Larry. This was really fun, and it was good to kind of test drive some stuff. It felt really good. So
sounded good. Yeah,
and it's great to hear you guys' stuff too. And let's do this again.
Yeah, I'll have more Shakira facts.
There's no lower level for those. We can always.
You're not Shakira connoisseurs. Everything will be surprising.
Shakira's #1 as far as I'm concerned. No problem. Yeah. All right, guys. So let's do the official goodbye and then hang for just 1 second more, because then we have the ceremony we go through. Cthulhu
Blood of the Lamb
up or something. I don't know.
Yes.
So and the next edition of this is in December. Hopefully it'll be pretty good, but it can't be as good as this, right? Right. So I guess we'll wave and say goodnight. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. And thanks to Dan Raeburn and Lina Ferreira. Close enough?
Oh, very, very close.
Yes. And I've been Larry O'Dean, your host. Have a great night, everybody. Be safe. And thanks again for watching.
Good night.